Oh yeah. That was effortless. How's it going, everyone? Mike Moo here. Today we are going to take a look at this knife set which the company imarku sent over to me. This is a 16-piece knife set. These are just some of my first impressions. I have the knife set here. This is the retail knife set. I'm gonna have links down below for this. I agreed to do a video about this knife set. Apparently some people like the videos that I did in previous times about some home kitchen wares. I'm going to try to be as objective as possible, and none of this is scripted, nor is anybody reviewing this video before it is being posted. So these are all my own thoughts about this. So this knife set is a high carbon stainless steel knife set. It's a 16-piece set, which means that you have knives for just about every single occasion or use. Starting out with an 8-inch chef knife, 8-inch bread knife, 8-inch slicing knife, 7-inch sentoku knife, 6-inch chef knife, 5-inch utility knife, 3-inch paring knife, a steak knife that is 5 inches, kitchen shears that are 8 inches, kitchen shears that are 5.5 inches, and then you have a knife block. And it looks like the knife block is made of some sort of wood. It also has a nice natural wood handle, and that's just something that just looks awesome. And probably, when shaped well, feels really good in the hand for use. But we'll take a look and see how that is here. All right, so I'm going to do the unboxing right now. This is the full experience. I've never looked at these knives before in my life other than through the pictures. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about that. Just a little bit of a spacer so that the knives would fit nicely in this box. Okay, this is pretty heavy. This is where I presume all the knives are in, right over here in this little box. And then we have the knife block, which I presume is down here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the knife block first, because I'm going to have to have a place to put the knives in. And I want to mention also that I am not a professional chef. I just do a lot of product reviews. And I'm not the one that does most of the cooking in this household, but I do some of the prep work, so I have some experience there. All right, knife block. Okay, this is a nice piece of wood. I'm looking down here at the bottom. You can see this is where the drainage holes are, so this goes all the way through here. So if you have any water that might come through, it's going to drain right out in the bottom, so that's something to keep in mind. Has a little logo here, imarku logo down here that is fully engraved. I think it looks pretty good, and this is real wood. This looks actually really nice. This looks nicer than the product pictures that they have. So yeah, and it actually feels very nice and weighty as well. We'll see how well this works. You can see you have all the slots all cut in over here. And yeah, you can tell it's real solid wood. Sure, different pieces of wood, but I actually thought that they would be using a cheaper wood based on the quality of the pictures that they have. Okay, so this looks good. That is a bonus. And just so you know, if the footage down here looks a little bit shaky, that's because I am actually, as I was saying, if this looks a little bit shaky, it's because I am actually using a Snow Peak camping table here in the living room in order to record this video. It's just a nicer place for me to record all my unboxings. Okay, this supposedly holds all the pieces. We'll double check and verify that's the case. And then in here, in this other long little box, pretty hefty, you can tell that this is where everything else is located. Okay, now from what I have seen, and most places that sell knives also package it like this. And this is my preferred way to having it packaged. I don't like it in plastic. So this has paper around, and then in the plastic bag around all the pieces here. Okay, so it looks like the wood is matched up here. And I would say this actually feels really good. Oh. Wow. I believe this is one of the steak knives. This feels like a steak knife. You know what? I don't even remember. So anyway, in here, we have a little bit of a guide here, along with some information about the company, the warnings, and the different series. They have a whole series of knives that you can check out down below. And they have an iMaster series. I'm not sure where this fits in terms of the series, but it looks like what they use, according to this set here, is they use a lot of Pakkawood, Pakkawood. That's pretty exotic, at least here in California, at least for me. Okay, so here's one. Oh, that's sharp, but even though it's sharp, it looks like, yep, it looks like down here on the very bottom, and you will probably not be able to tell from this, is that there's a little bit of a sharpening error here. So they messed up there, a little bit of sharpening, and it's not perfect. Okay, not perfect. It's still super sharp, but it's not perfect, as in someone messed up somewhere in the sharpening process of that, but just a little bit, teeny tiny bit. This is super heavy. These are some really heavy duty shears. This looks like it's a hedge trimmer. Wow. Yeah, this is thick too. This, I believe, will cut through kitchen chicken bones. No problem. Wow. This belongs in the garden. I'm sure I can cut some branches with this. I'm not going to, but yeah, I can definitely feel that. And I also noticed another thing about these is this doesn't look as polished. You could just get some cloth there and wipe it down. You know what? You should probably wipe down and wash all these knives before you start using it anyway, but that's just one of the first impressions I have of this. Feels really good. I like that there's 3 rivets on here. This is super duper solid, and also you can tighten it up right here and because, you know, over time this will get loose. Has a really nice sound to it, and a locking mechanism down here to lock it in place. The locking mechanism here feels like it's a little bit fragile, whereas the rest of it, and I only mention that because the rest of this thing feels so solid. Okay, this one, I believe would just go right over here because it's, yeah, it'll fit in right here. Here's the other interesting thing about this. The cutout, this is a full-on square cutout, and this is not fully square. Obviously it'll fit in here, but I can see how over time there will be markings here on the wood. So that may or may not bother you, but I just thought I'd mention this. Over time with wear, this is not going to look as nice as it does right now, unless you're super careful. I believe these are one of the steak knives, and they feel really good. Yeah, I have pretty large hands. This feels good enough, but I also feel like if you have even larger hands, the handle might not be long enough for you. But it is almost just about right. See that? I like that it's full tang all the way down, and I think all these pieces are all full tang, and that means that the steel goes all the way down through the bottom. Really higher end knives will do that, not the cheap stuff. Okay, and then this whole bottom here is also metal too, all the way through. Very nicely done. And there's 2 rivets on the knives here, and they got a little protector here, and this is super sharp. Yeah, so I think this is one of the steak knives. I'm just going to stick it over here. Okay, next piece. Looks like we just have a bunch of these steak knives. Looks like there's going to be, I don't know, 6 of them here. And I'm looking to see if the sharpening is perfect on this one. Yep, sharpening is perfect. There is a little bit of, okay, if you can see that, there's a little bit of laser engraved branding there. You may or may not like that. I don't know. I'm just putting these in here. These are really nice steak knives. I don't have any steak right now, but I did have some Wagyu a couple days ago. Okay, these are perfectly sharpened. Super sharp. These are sharper than any steak knives that I've used in recent times, years. Okay, this looks like it's that little paring knife. Very nice. This is actually one of the more common sized knives that we actually use in the household, which is strange. My wife is Vietnamese and she tends to like using the really cheap Kiwi stuff. And those are plastic handles and everything. And really that works out well because she is not very good at handling knives like this, or really fine knives. This is one of the reasons why I don't have really super knife sets. This is actually really nicely sharpened. I'm looking very closely at this, and it's already perfectly sharpened. So I believe this goes in one of the smaller slots over here. So unlike the shears here, the openings here are actually perfectly matched. Now I can see that there's a few scratches here, but you know what? It'll end up being scratched just really over time, just because of how sharp these knives are, and just fitting it in perfectly. You need a little bit of coordination, which older people might not have. Okay, here is yet another steak knife. This one is, let me see if it's perfect or not. Oh, this one has just a tiny little bit also not perfectly sharpened, but this is something that once you use the sharpener, you run it through the included sharpening piece, will probably go away. But I just want to mention that it's not perfect. Okay, now we come to something a little bit more interesting. This looks like a chef's knife. No. What is this one? Super long, perfectly sharpened. Yep. It is perfectly sharpened and polished. Boy, is that sharp. I'm not sure exactly where this one goes. I'm just gonna, yep, looks like I found a spot. This looks like a chef's knife. I'm gonna stick this in here. Now, if you see my other video, you'll mention that when I grew up, we didn't have this many knives to choose from. We didn't really know what to use. Having 16 of these pieces, I know what these are, the six pieces here. This one is perfectly done from the factory, from what I can tell. Super sharp. There doesn't need to be anything done to this one. And that's not too bad. So only 2 of them have very minor imperfections. This final one is almost perfect. You got to pretty much look at it with a magnifying glass. But the edge is perfect. But if I'm looking very closely at the final sharpening of this one, is not perfect. Something that I can tell just visually without using magnifying glasses, but it's all about attention to detail with me. Okay, maybe this is the sharp. This is the, all right, let me take a look at this here. So this one is, what is this one? This one looks like it's a good size for me to use. And I say that because, okay, so the other one I believe was a slicing knife. So I believe this one was a slicing knife. And I believe this is the 6-inch chef knife. This is probably the one that I'll probably use the most out of the set. So, taking a really close look at this. Yeah, this is pretty close to perfect. Yeah. Ooh, that is so sharp. Just looking at it. All right. So it's good. This one is like practically perfectly done. I love how these are all full tang. Every single piece in here is a good knife set. Okay, so I'm thinking the slide is over here. I'm gonna have to rearrange this after I figure out what I don't have done correctly here. Okay, next one, this is the, wait a second. It can't be this many steak knives? What? I'm running out of space for these. Maybe some of these are not all steak knives. Okay, so there's 6 of them here. I got an extra one. All right, 7. And this one is also not as perfect. All right, so it looks like whoever is doing the steak knife sharpening on here, I can see very teeny tiny little bit of imperfections right here at the edge. And you'll find this to be the case when they use electric sharpeners. I imagine when you use electric sharpeners, as opposed to hand, where it's perfect, you're just going to have a lower cost knife set. And I believe that's what will drop this below the $200 or $300 price range. Okay, here's the sharpener. And oh, I noticed something on this that is not perfect on this one. Okay, you can't tell visually looking at it, but when you feel it, you feel that this, if done perfectly, this is going to be extra smooth. Like it is going to line up precisely with the metal on here. Not this one. This one, I feel a little bit of the tang coming through the wood. Okay, so it's not perfect. Is it going to bother me much? Only if you like perfection. And who doesn't like perfection? I guess some people. But it's not perfect, is what I'm saying. I can feel the tang. It's not smooth over here in the end. So it's not perfect. Also this, yeah, it's not perfect. I feel a little bit of movement. Oh, you know what? This whole piece screws and unscrews. So unlike the other stuff, this is not a full tang. This is two separate pieces. And I guess that makes sense because you're manufacturing something. It's going to be a little bit cheaper to do it that way. So this screws in right over here. So this whole piece screws in together. And I guess that's why I felt a little bit of movement. So you can tighten this up. I guess that's an acceptable compromise. And I think they did this to stop it from going all the way down through the knife block. But other than that, I want to say this feels front heavy. This does not feel, yeah, this is really front heavy. It's not balanced. It's okay because it's not something I'm using to cut. It's just something I'm going to use to sharpen, potentially before every use. Here is, I believe, the bread knife. Here's the bread knife right over here. See all the nice ridges here. It looks really clean. Let's take a really close look at this here. And yeah, almost perfect. I'm gonna look at this under a magnifying glass, but the close-up vision that I have with my glasses off is really good. Everything else is good. I do believe this is gonna be just fine with cutting through bread. All right, so all these fit. Looks like maybe there's just a different, I could just stick them in different slots here. And it's gonna work out okay. I think this last slot over here, the last slot over here is for the santoku. And then we have the final chef knife. So the santoku knife is probably one that I'm probably going to use the second most used or the first most used for me out of this set. And they better do this one right. Okay, so there's two protections on this one. Extra protection over here, extra protection over here. This is super slim. Everything's straight. Not perfect here. It's not extra smooth. It's so close, like fractions. Just fractions of a fraction of a millimeter, like 0.02. I feel it. That could bother you. That's a shame, especially for something that I'm going to use every day. Yeah. Not perfect. Actually, visually, you can't even tell this is something that you feel. It's so close. But the handle's big enough, especially for me. It's perfect. And oh, that is sharp. Okay. It's acceptable, but not perfect. This handle. So it looks like there's going to be some variation in the quality of the wood with the handle. And understandably, though, wood is wood. So it can expand and it can also contract with water, humidity. I don't know if you knew this. I'm a woodworker and moisture content is a big deal. Which brings me to another point, is that what might be perfect or not perfect right now might get affected by how much humidity you have in the air and also whether or not you stick this in the dishwasher. Now I looked real briefly. It said that this is dishwasher safe. If I were you, I wouldn't put it in a dishwasher. Just saying, you're just going to ruin any of these handles here. and it's usually not that hard to wash the knives, and that's part of the reason why we don't have super fancy knives, is because we put every single knife in the freaking dishwasher, even though we shouldn't. This is the chef's knife. Normally I would say get a 10-inch one, but this one feels really good. It fits my hand perfectly. Just a tiny bit of exposure on the tang, that's acceptable. And this one actually, I guess I'm overemphasizing that this is not perfect. But to get that perfection, it's going to be so hard to do. And it's really close. Okay, so let's take a close look at this one. So this is probably going to be my most used knife because it is the chef's knife. And they got the sharpening pretty darn close to perfect. Yeah, pretty close to perfect. The edge is so sharp on these. That is amazing how sharp this is. So, pretty close to perfect. If I had... Okay, so I have one minor gripe, and this could be just in terms of just using the knife, is that if I slip this over here, this feels a little bit sharper than it needs to, which means I could potentially hurt myself with bad knife technique. And if you are not really good at handling knives, that could be a problem for you. So this right here, this is sharper than it needs to be. I understand it's part of the blade, but that is a bit of a problem, and it's something that I can easily just sand down, but I should point that out. Now that I've noticed it on this one, I'm going to take a look at my second most used knife and see if that's a problem here. Okay, so it's pretty similar to the rest of it. I wish this went down a little bit further, but then if it did, it'd be a little bit harder to sharpen the knives. So if you have really big hands, like really big hands, if you're a really tall person, I feel like these were more designed for Asian people with smaller hands. But if you have really giant hands, this right here, you'll probably want to sand down a little bit so that it doesn't feel as sharp there. It's not going to be a problem for us because as I'm holding it, I was just being super critical about that last piece. Okay, we have a paring knife, but I don't know why. I think they messed up on here because one of these is supposed to be... There's 6 steak knives, utility knife. So one is 5 inches. That's what it is. The one utility knife and one steak knife, I couldn't tell the difference between all of them. So let me just take these all out here and take a closer look at this. What's the difference between a utility knife and a steak knife? So these 3 are all the same. Oh, here it is. All right, this is the utility knife. This, which is strange because I would think that a utility knife is going to be the one that has the serrated edges. What do I know? Okay, so this one is the utility knife, and it has no serrated edges, as opposed to the steak knife, which all have the serrated edges. All right, that's it. That's every single knife in here. So out of the 6 steak knives, I had 2 that has minor imperfections coming directly from the factory or from the box. And they are really minor. Most people aren't going to mention anything about them in any video or review that you see. And actually, I don't even know if this will even show up on camera which one it was. And it is something. It's so minor that I can only tell from the glistening of the light coming through. I do like perfection. And that is really, you cannot see it on the camera. It's just not going to show up on the camera unless you use a magnifying glass. Okay, so next portion, I'm going to take out something that I need to cook and eat anyway. So I'm going to take something out. I'm going to cut it here. All right, so for lunch today, I'm just going to have a little bit of a salad. And for something like this, I have a piece of chicken what I'm going to do is pick out what I feel like is a more appropriate knife. So I'm going to look at the, I think this one is the, yes, this one is the chef knife that is a 6-inch chef knife. Again, like I said, the one that I'll probably use the most. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to rinse this off and wash it a little bit just so it's clean. All right, just a quick rinse on here. And I can see how perfectly sharpened this one is. And again, I wish this part right over here was thicker. It's not the case here, but it does produce a sharper knife that cuts all the way through the edge here. The balance is good. I like that. The balance is good. All right, so I'm going to take this piece of chicken that I had cooked up and burnt a little bit. I'm sorry, please don't judge me too much, but this is realistically what actually happens here. I'm just going to cut off some pieces. Oh, this is really sharp. And it's so sharp I actually cut through some of that bone there just now. Oh, I love that. Very easy to use, very easy to you know what, I'm thinking about the degrees of sharpness on here, and I want to say this is probably a 15-degree sharpness. I'm going to have to double check that with you. But I'm just slicing up pieces of the chicken to put in my salad and basically cutting off the bone from this thigh meat here. It's so sharp I'm cutting through the cartilage thinking that it's actually meat. But wow, that is really sharp. So it's pretty much ready to use right out of the box after you wash it. That is super sharp. It's so sharp that as I'm slicing down here, I'm actually cutting through some of that bone at the edge of the bone. So I'm getting a little bit of bone. I guess you can think of that as a little bit of a negative. My knife skills aren't that great. So don't follow me for any of my knife skills here. Wow, these are super sharp as it comes out from the factory. Good job, imarku. There's no extra sharpening that actually needs to be done right off the bat from these, from what I can tell, at least from the set that I have here. I want to make a little bit of a correction. Earlier, I thought that there were 2 sets of shears. Apparently, the one that I read is different. Okay, so this set comes with the chef knife, bread knife, slicing knife, santoku knife, 6-inch chef knife, which is what I'm using right here. It is the 6-inch chef knife. The paring knife, steak knife, six of the steak knives, 1 kitchen sharpener, and 1 kitchen shears. And of the set, in terms of sharpening perfection, I'd say that 2 of the steak knives, at least visually, were not perfect. A third one was close to perfect. It's so minor, but it's something I noticed. So if you have OCD, I guess it's like me OCD speaking. If you have OCD, you're probably going to notice that. And then also one of the negatives are some of these other knives. This is not perfect. I can feel it. A blind person can feel it. But if you're visually looking at it, you'll see that it looks perfect. Just that you can't tell until you move your fingers over it. And that may bother you, but if it does, then you can actually sand it down too, probably. But you're gonna need like a grinding stone. I don't know. Anyway, that may bother you. But these are real wooden handles. This is not engineered wood. This is real wood. It's not fake stuff. I believe it's that Pakkawood. But wow, that is really sharp. That's one of the easiest things that I've done, is taking off the meat of this with super sharp knives. One thing about using super sharp knives that I've noticed is that if your knife technique is terrible, you may eventually cut yourself if you're used to using dull blades. And so that is one of the concerns that I do have. Maybe some people do have. Now, because this is just all I'm doing about this is this unboxing and first impressions review. I'm not going to be able to tell you how well these high carbon steel knife set is going to hold up as far as holding the sharpness, particularly since how sharp these are. So I don't know how we know what the what's that called? What is that rating? The hardness rating of these knives are. I don't think it is mentioned here. It's good enough. Okay, so I have these cut. I'm going to throw these into my simple little salad, and I'll test something else. I'll test chopping up something else. All right, next up in my chopping block, I have this tomato, and I went and took the chef knife. This is the 8-inch chef's knife on a really ripe tomato, and I just want to show you where the balance is on this. I'm just gonna, so it's pretty well balanced. It's like right over here, which feels really good. This is where the balance is. So it makes this chopping motion pretty good, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna slice up some tomato here. This is a pretty ripe tomato. And I'm not an expert knife person. You know how when you watch the Jinsu knives or whatever, the old 90s commercials, they really know how to handle a knife really well in order to slice through things and make it look super easy. I'm not that at all. I'm just, oh yeah. That was effortless. That's how you know you have a really sharp knife, is how effortless that was, the cut. It's so effortless that I don't even really need to push down. I am literally just letting the knife cut the tomato by itself. Keep in mind, this is a really sharp knife, okay? And also weighty because of the material of the steel. There's a lot of steel in here. So I am just holding it like this, and I'm not pushing it down at all, and it is going right through, just like that. That is not how I use a knife. I do not use 2 fingers to cut. And then another one of those things where they show with a Jinsu knife is how easy it is to peel a tomato. And I'm going to be real frank, I've never done this before. I've seen them do it just as I want to see if I can be one of those demonstrators. And yeah, look at that. I'm not even holding the knife really special, and that is sharp. And I'm not filleting this at all. I'm just not showing you fillet. I'm just showing you how easy it is. But again, this is a really sharp knife. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to finish cutting these up. Not in any particular way, shape, or form. Just going to throw them in my salad. Sharp right out of the box. That is impressive. Okay. That's cutting tomatoes without smashing them. All right. So I'm going to throw this in my salad. I'll be right back with something else if I have anything else to throw in there. Okay, so I am actually out of things that I'm going to throw in my salad. I was going to put an avocado in there. That's really not that hard to do at all. And my avocados are actually already pre-smashed from Costco. And I thought, hey, why not do one of those ridiculous paper cut tests? So I have 3 different thicknesses of papers. This one's super thin. And I'm just going to take a steak knife. Oop. Actually, I'm not going to take a steak knife. Steak knife doesn't make any sense because it's serrated. So I will just take the, let me try it. Okay, I will take the Santoku knife. No, this is not the Santoku knife. This one's the Santoku knife. And I'm going to take a look at this piece of paper here. This is actually thicker than 20-pound paper. I want to say this is 24 to 30 pound. And I'm going to do a slice, and yes, it cuts through. Is it complete? Yep, it's pretty effortless. That is super sharp. So that's a Santoku. I will try the utility knife. We'll do that too. Yep, also very sharp. Yeah. And let's see, this one is about the same. I want to say about 30 pounds. These are slightly thicker flyer paper, and yeah, it cuts through no problem with that. So we're not going to have any issue. All right, I'm going to try the steak knife. Yeah, serrated. It's not, it's really not what it's for. This is really for, yeah. So that's not cutting through anything. All right, so I just want to give you that with a little bit of comparison because, I don't know, people like showing sliced paper for some reason. So just for comparison, these are the cheap Kiwi knives that my wife loves to use. This is, as you can see, Kiwi. It gets the job done. She really likes using it. This one, I remember I sharpened it with the Chefmate XV15. It's reasonably sharp. It actually held its edge reasonably well. And I'll just do a simple quick test over here, and just to show you. Yep, there is a difference. It feels sharp. The weight is terrible because it's so lightweight. Yeah, that is not what I expected. I expected to do something. I'm not making this up. Okay, so I'm going to try the sharpener then. And I'm going to do this on here. See if that makes any difference whatsoever on these cheap knives. Okay, just a quick little simple sharpening. Not an expert at it. It should have made a difference. And the answer is no. All right, so I'm going to test another one. I'm going to test the paring knife, see if this makes any difference. Oh yeah, that does slice through. So guys, there is a difference. I guess the paper cut test does kind of work. And this is wet, that's why I didn't go through on that one. But wet, this is slightly wet. Yep, there is a difference. And this is just from the box. Okay, so one other test I'm going to do is the shearing. This set here. This is the first one that I took. And I'm going to take this and I'm just going to cut this chicken bone right over here from my salad, just for no reason other than to show. Ooh, wow. Okay. So there's not too much leverage. It cut through it just fine. You can hear the crunching. But I will say that my wife is not going to cut through chicken bone like this with this. This just doesn't seem to make sense. But there is a lot of leverage and it does cut through. And you're probably better off just using a regular knife. Ooh, yeah. Because this is too wide when it's this open. But you know what? That's the case with most of these. So let me see if you could do that. And you can also cut this piece of, okay, you can also cut this piece of paper. Just like a regular set of scissors. I guess that's a win. So that's really good. You can do both with that. I'm going to do a final, okay, let me try cutting through this with, all right, I'm just going to try the kitchen knife here. Cut through this bone here. No, this is too hard to do. You're going to need a butcher knife to do that chopping and hacking. I'm not going to hack it here. It's just going to make a bit of a mess. But there is a difference. So the other videos that I have where I show butchering this knife, that's going to chop right through it with the weight of the blade. And I'm not doing that with this. It's not so sharp that it's going to go right through this bone. It won't do that. Okay, what do I think about the Imarku knife set, the 16-piece? Oh, forgot to put this back in here. All right, I want to say first impressions, the knife block looks very nice, but it's not something that's going to stay looking really nice over time. Unfortunately, that's the case. So this is stained. Most wood that comes out is stained. It is real wood. However, I can already see how things are going to get scratched up a little bit. So I'm going to give it maybe about 4 out of 5 stars. It's super heavy. This whole set, once it comes in here, this does feel really weighty. I want to say this feels, I'm going to guess about 15 pounds total with all the knives in here. So there's a lot of steel going on in this set, which is a good thing. That's something that you want. And at least most of the pieces feel really balanced as well. So every single piece in here felt really sharp, completely sharp out of the box. I really have taken out every single little piece. The only minor defects on some of these things that I visually saw, was just a little bit right over here at the edge, and that's pretty common on lesser knives. So for instance, if you get a Zwilling steak knife set, I think it's $120 or something, and you do get only, I want to say six steak knives. I think these are perfectly fine. And they actually feel pretty good as long as your hands aren't too big. But these are steak knives, all right? So even the steak knives are super sharp. But what really impressed me about this is how well made everything else about these are. And the attention to detail on the rest of the knives are excellent, except for one thing. That is that on some of these knives, this is not perfect. And I guess that is common on most knives. I don't know how that will be affected during use, but that is a bit of a problem when you have full tang knives that come on all the way like this. Getting that wood to work perfectly matched up with the full tang is something that's very difficult, and no doubt adds to the manufacturing cost of said knives. Very close, but not perfect on every single one. And that's what makes this not a $1,000 set, I would say. And also the hardness of the steel blades remains to be seen. There is no official numbers that I can tell from the box, so it's not expected to be super high hardness rating, for instance. But when you don't have something that's super high hardness, it makes it a lot easier to sharpen too. So this is something that you can easily sharpen a lot more quickly than if it were really high VG rating. Of course, if you regularly take your knives to a knife sharpener, having a high VG rating isn't going to matter much to you anyway. It's probably going to, if anything, that might actually be preferred. Another one disappointing piece, I say, is this. This is, out of all the pieces, this piece, for whatever reason, feels like they didn't quite get it just right. And you gotta have to match this up just fine to make it. I think this is just the OCD part of me getting this just right. But it doesn't really matter, and the weight is completely off. With this feels like just a kind of a bit of a throw-in piece here. Surprisingly, these are also good at cutting paper. Very heavy duty. Santoku knife. Feels really good. The negative, I would say, also is how sharp some of this feels. So if you have not good knife technique, that could be a problem. Also, if you are one to hold the knife like this piece over here is not as ergonomic. I hold my knives like this. You hold it like this, that may or may not bother you. I don't know. That's just something that I'm more keenly aware of as I'm looking at these. And this is what I mean. If you look at the knife right over here, this is super, super sharp. Let me see if I can find a knife as an example that isn't that way. I'll be right back. All right, let me share with you a cheap knife. Okay, so this is a cheap knife. This is a Cuisinart. It is C77555. PPC-BCF. I got it really cheap as a kit. It's all metal. This is something that we throw regularly in a dishwasher. It's also reasonably sharp, but I know that this dulls pretty quickly. See this? This is thick. This is not going to cut or hurt a novice knife person at all. It's just built into the blade. See that? All that? It's just not. So that is one major good ergonomic thing about this. What's not so great is the balance is not great. This is really front heavy when used. It also doesn't, it feels a little front heavy to me. And this is not cutting the paper at all. But you know what? This hasn't been sharpened in a while. Look at that. That's what it looks like. As opposed to the chef knife that comes in the, see that? It just slices right through. And I don't know if any amount of sharpening is really going to help with this. I think this really needs to be done professionally, resharpened again, at least with a whetstone or something. But yeah, there is a difference. Okay, yeah, cuts a little bit better, a little bit jaggedy. But yeah, there most definitely is a difference. But this you don't have to worry about. I throw it in the dishwasher. You can see already the imperfections that got on it just from being rubbed up against some other pieces of metal. And this is, whereas these are much finer knives and much better balanced for the chopping, that it might make sense to you. Okay, that's it for my first impressions video about this set. If you are interested in getting this nice, super sharp knife set, I have links down below. I'm pretty sure they have a Black Friday deal going on. You might want to check this out. It definitely looks and feels very impressive. Obviously, there are some cons, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons as far as this is concerned. And actually, you know what I just looked on right now? This is a less than $200 set. Those ratings have to go up a little bit higher once you factor that in. So that does make it a lot more impressive than what I thought. I really thought these were $300 sets. Starting out, just first impressions looking at it. But you're getting a lot of bang for your buck on this set. Now, if I really didn't care and I abused my knives and everything, there's no need to spend that much. You can get something super cheap. You can get one of these sets from just about anywhere. But once you start, do yourself a favor, once you start using a really nice knife set, unfortunately, you will notice the differences, and then you'll just be a little bit spoiled. But for me, I don't need 16 pieces. I just need a couple of good pieces from here. The rest of it are just bonus. So if you factor that in at the price per knife, it's ridiculously cheap. All right, that's it for this video. Please go to like, subscribe for more. I'll catch you next one. Thanks for watching.
It cut through so well.
Yeah.
Like this. Look.
I know. I told you when I was doing the test earlier, I did the tomato, and it sliced itself.
It's amazing.